Could we do a summary on the 3 things you have found that have helped your mental health that we could share with other people?
So the 3 things that have helped the most with my mental health during topical steroid withdrawal is 1,000,000% the community. It's so important to have people who know exactly how you're feeling, even without having a conversation. Seeing someone that looks like you is the most validating thing ever. So having a community of people who know what you're going through is number one, and also to find productivity within yourself, because during TSW you can really lose yourself. Obviously for me, I was a mum at the same time, and you lose yourself in that as well. So I'm still trying to find myself again. So until I'm able to do that, until Albie's at school and I'm completely recovered, I try and stay productive. Like at home, I'll decorate at home, or I'll get creative. Like, you need to find the things that you love again, and kind of get stuck into them, which is really helpful to just hold on to who you are. And number 3, I would say just being understood in general. That's why I say to you, I've got a best friend now in South Africa who's going through TSW, and I probably, if I'm having a problem, even if it's not skin related, I go to her now, like the first person, and we've never even met. So having your network of people, whether it's online, whether it's physically, but make sure you have people around you who are considerate to what you're going through and aren't going to run away when times get tough, because it's a tough thing to go through.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing those with us.
Yeah, there's some really helpful tips.
No worries.
I guess, how did you juggle motherhood with having your own skin condition as well as kind of helping Albie with his?
When I was thinking about this last night, I found it really hard to kind of put into words, and I wrote down some notes and I put in capitals unimaginable.
Yeah.
And I got quite teary as well when I was making my notes, because I don't actually know how I've done it. And it's really hard to not focus on the really negative parts, because obviously they're going to be the ones that are at the forefront in your mind. It's such a conflicting thing to go through, especially with it being my first experience of motherhood and pregnancy. Like, having felt like there's a horrible W that kind of has hindered it and made it such a different experience, will always be something that's really difficult, especially, if I were to meet someone one day and wanted to have another baby, I don't actually know if I would, because I speak to some people who are 4 years, 7 years TSW healed, and when they get pregnant, it comes back because of the hormones. So I don't actually know if I could go down that path. And with my experience, obviously I was in a relationship and we had a baby, and both of our skin was a massive impact on our relationship. And now I'm not in that relationship anymore. Not to say that that's what caused it to end, but that's a really vulnerable, scary thing for me to potentially go through again. And I don't know if I had another child, if they'd have eczema. And I'm such a different person with being in a better place with my skin, and Albie being in a better place with his skin. Because in our worst times, I think my worst flare was 6 months, while he was flaring badly too. And it led to the point of suicidal ideation. So it just got to points where, like, you would literally just want to run away, which just made you feel horrible, because you're running away from the person who's kind of relying on you. But it really genuinely just got too much sometimes. And I had to move areas after my breakup, and I only really had my mum physically to rely on. So, you know, in the mornings when I'd have to get up and have an oat bath so I could move a bit easier, so my skin didn't split. Trying to look after a baby and just having the guilt and the weight on me was, yeah, like I said, I don't really know how I got to this point. When I look back at that version of me, I just want to give her like the biggest hug and reassure her that things were going to get better, because when you're in the depths of it, you genuinely can't see the light. Like I'm so grateful for Albie, because he gave me light at the end of the tunnel. During my pregnancy, if I was having bad days with my skin and stuff, I'd always have the excitement that he was going to come soon and I'd have all the love. And if I'm having a bad day when he was here already, and you know, during postpartum, I was looking last night and I've got videos of me running around the room with him all happy, and then I swipe through my camera roll and the next picture is how bad my body was. And now I'm thinking, how did I even do that? I'm not sure how I was able to do it, but you somehow just do. I would love to know how, but you just manage. And you know, when someone's relying on you like that, you just have to keep going. But when I was 5 months postpartum, I did go on to antidepressants for the first time in my life, and I was contemplating immunosuppressants at the time just because I needed some relief. I was having my first bad flare postpartum. I think my flare was only 5 weeks, so calmed down, didn't go on to immunosuppressants. I had all the tests for it, so I was prepping for it, and I never wanted to go onto meds because I was scared of them, and I just didn't want any more consequences off of perhaps what they might bring. And then at 2.5 years TSW, I did go on to immunosuppressants, and that's when I was having suicidal ideation. And they didn't actually kick in for about 5 or 6 months. So that was a very grueling time, because immunosuppressants, like in the TSW community, for some people is kind of like the steroid magic cream, because you really see it working for some people. So I thought, you know, it's going to make me better and I'm going to be okay again for a period of time. And then it's the heartbreak that it's not actually as quick, or maybe it won't work for you. But eventually it did, and around the same time Albie's skin got better as well. And yeah, we were just completely new people, both of us. But it got to a point at around 2 years and 7 months into TSW. So Albie, I think, was about 1.5 years old. And my skin was really bad at the time still. I was on immunosuppressants, but I hadn't really kicked in yet. And it really affects your relationships with people around you, because you're so desperate. And I know everyone's got their own lives and their own thing going on and their own issues, but I think where you become so desperate, you kind of can't rationalize that very well. So, you know, I had fallouts with friends and family, and it got to the point where one of my family members felt so like hopeless, helpless for me, that they actually rang social services. Like it's so horrible to think, like, as an outsider listening to this, but when social services rang me and said that someone had referred me, I actually cried with relief, because so alone. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to get help. And even though they were strangers, and even though that came with really scary potential consequences of like maybe Albie being taken away from me or something, I just felt relieved that there was going to be help. So I wasn't warned either about anyone doing the referral. And with social services, you do get told who makes the referral, and it was my mum. So it was the only person I physically had around me at the time who was supporting me and who I'd just lived with for the past, I think it was about 7-8 months before I had to move out of my parents' house, because we were just clashing so much, where I was going through such a hard time and it burdened them a lot. And so I moved into my own place, and I was in a terrible state. That was at the point where I was having suicidal ideation, and I just had to do it alone, which is horrible to think about for myself, looking back at that version of me. And I just feel so sorry for her, but I didn't feel supported. And the support that you need during that time, even just having TSW yourself, is, you know, you need an army. But then having a child who is suffering as well is so triggering. Seeing Albie scratch, I kind of felt the pain of the scratch, but I would imagine him having like a TSW kind of itch, because that's what I was enduring. So even that was really triggering for me. So yeah, I mean, me and my mum's relationship has never been better, and I was able to kind of think, you know, she meant well. And we've had discussions of me feeling like she went behind my back and it was a betrayal. But it's so hard. You have to just you have no other choice other than to just rationalize that you understand that people are trying to help. But she did actually mention to social services that she was concerned that I wasn't using the prescribed medication that Albie was being prescribed, the steroids. And that was the bit that hurt, because she could see what it was doing to me, but she was still confused in her mind. You know, it's really difficult when you have like conflicting views, and I think it's just out of desperation. People just think, you know, doctors and medication must be right, because that's what we've all grown up to kind of learn. And it's really hard, even seeing your daughter for nearly 3 years struggle because of medication. You still want that for your grandson, because you just want to make them better.
Yeah.
So yeah, it affects every way, every part of your life, basically.
Yeah, there's so much to touch on there, Beth. Just the first thing to say is that as a community, we're so lucky to have you as part of it and to share your story, because there's other people, isn't there, that are going through this and they think they're alone, but they're not alone, and you're helping by sharing your story. And then towards the end of that, you kind of touched on your mum mentioned about not using the prescription, and I think that comes down to the massive lack of information that there is around. So from your experience, where should people go to find information, and how can we all educate ourselves on this?
So it's really hard being asked like advice on where people should go for skin conditions, because the first thing people will probably expect you to say is the doctors. But it's just so controversial and contradicting that that's probably where I would not advise you to go. And it sounds really strange. I would always advise you to go to the doctors. If you think that you might have an infection, without a doubt, go to the doctors. But if you're having symptoms, worsening symptoms, and you feel like you're not being heard at the GP or the pharmacy or wherever you've tried to get help, there are a couple of TSW charities. So one's called Eczema and one is called Scratch That, and they have a lot of information on their websites, particularly symptoms lists of what symptoms you might have whilst you're still using steroids, and then symptoms that you'll have once you stop using steroids. And that is what I used as my Bible to kind of know what I was going through, because I've never actually had a diagnosis of TSW. I've seen, I think I counted 7 derms, and none of them have diagnosed me. So yeah, they're the charities that are available. There's also a documentary called Preventable, and there's another one coming out called Still Preventable. So they document a lot of people's experiences. There's dermatologists on there. There's a wide range of people on there advocating for TSW. So it's really helpful as well to see the medical side of it actually acknowledging TSW too. That gives you a lot of validation and yeah, just the right kind of things that you need to hear when you're in the lows and confused. There are charities as well, like Home Start, that I have been in connection with, who can help you in different ways. But me and Albie used to go to a group every Monday morning with the same people, so they'd be struggling as well, for all different reasons. But it's kind of like a no judgment type space where you can just go, and there's volunteers there who can help play with Albie whilst you get a bit of a rest, and there's mental health support and that kind of thing. And that was valuable. That was really great, because even on my worst physically looking days and mental health days, I knew that I could go there, and if I said to them, I can't play with him today, can you play with him because I'm too sore or whatever, that they could take him for them 2 hours and I could just sit and chill. So that was really helpful as well. And they also do home visits and calls as well if you want some support. And it was really lovely. We got like a Christmas package from them, from like a family who knew like Albie's allergies, and it was just really sweet. It was like a nice community feel. Yeah, they're a really amazing organisation. But there's also charities like Carers Support. So my mum could have gone there. So any carers of any condition, you can go there and get financial support, mental health support. I actually got therapy through them. So they're a really amazing charity as well. But I would always recommend getting mental health support in general. So like counselling, or just try it. Like I would always recommend people to at least try it, because I know some people are quite hesitant, but it's the validation that's you really need during TSW. There's also something called PALS, so it's patient and liaison services. So if you've had like a bad dermatology appointment or GP appointment or whatever, and you don't feel heard, or you don't feel like it went very well, you can contact them and let them know, and they'll do like a investigation into that. That happened when I reached out to them when I was pregnant, and I was told that they couldn't help me anymore. And they discharged me. That's when I contacted PALS and said I wasn't happy and I felt very neglected, and they looked into it, and they actually made that department have a meeting. So the dermatology department of that hospital had a meeting, and they later realised that they could have offered me light therapy because that's safe during pregnancy, but they told me that it wasn't. So at least that kind of, you know, me doing that, although it was a lot for me to do and it took a lot of effort, it did make that department in the hospital realise maybe they went a bit wrong there. So that was really helpful as well. And that will obviously be helpful to lots more people, because they'll learn through my experience. But the community as well is invaluable, because there's so many people going through exactly what you're going through. That has been the biggest support, and I wouldn't have been able to get through TSW without the community. So 100%. There's Instagram, TikTok, Facebook groups, so it's quite widespread.
I think that's what we really admire, is just how supportive the community is. Like, I think people sometimes underestimate how powerful it can be just to have someone going through the same thing as you, or just someone to relate or to talk to, especially when you're maybe being dismissed by people who can't relate.
Exactly.
I guess you've got the community, but we wanted to ask, like, what can we as a brand maybe do to help both raise awareness and support those with topical steroid withdrawal?
Yeah, so I think brands can support TSW and eczema in general just by like validating the existence of the condition. So obviously TSW is a condition that's very controversial. I've been kicked out of eczema support groups on Facebook and stuff because I've even mentioned it. So I know it's very controversial and a tricky subject for a lot of brands to actually even mention, because they could get backlash. But I think, you know, even doing this interview with you guys is so uplifting and so validating. Like, we will get the support wherever we can because it's very lacking. So knowing that a brand would even mention it, I think would really draw people in. So even just mention it on your socials, or sharing people that are going through certain conditions on Instagram and stuff, so people know what avenues to go down, and all of the resources I've just listed, like having them somewhere on your website, or, you know, somewhere that you can direct people to. And obviously you've got your little starter packs, which I think are amazing as well, with all your you have like mini samples of your products. Even that is amazing for something like TSW, because where we're so lost, we try and buy lots of things and don't know what's going to work. So it's amazing that you as a brand even have the little samples. That's an amazing thing for TSW. Just having like specific steroid-free tips and tricks on your Instagram and stuff, just to let people know specifically why you're advocating for steroid-free, I think is really important. Because someone with eczema who might be using steroids might think, oh, well, why are they mentioning steroid free? And then that can kind of, they can now then go down that rabbit hole and be educated a little bit more, and then they can make the choice. Because that's the thing, I didn't actually know of TSW when I was using steroids. So I think that's really important, because currently we don't know who is going to get it and who isn't going to get it. And I think that's the biggest danger, which is why like advocating for the condition is really important.
Thank you. Yeah, we definitely want to be able to support those with TSW. I think that's the one thing we've learned, I guess, from talking to you and getting involved in the community, is just how much that support means, and how helpful it can be,
and how much the awareness is needed. And earlier on as well, not later on. If it's, like you say, everywhere, people can research and find out the information and make decisions and advocate for themselves, like you've done and had to do over the years. Is there anything else you would like to say to the community?
Like with the community, I guess I just want to say thank you, because I don't know where I'd be without them. And the connections that you make are just the most incredible connections I've ever had in my whole life. Like, I've got best friends in South Africa, in different places of the world and different parts of England, which is just insane. Like, feeling so connected to people from different parts of the world that you actually haven't met yet is an incredible feeling. Although it's not come from a very nice experience, there are positives within having this condition, and just connecting to people. But yeah, hopefully we can get to a place where we do feel more heard, and we can help the people that aren't in our shoes yet, and hopefully we can prevent people from getting to this point.
Absolutely, definitely the end goal.
So yeah, I just wanted to mention one of the most significant times of me trying to reach out to help from the NHS, that I really struggled with, is when I was having suicidal ideation. I had a staph infection across my whole face, as well as TSW on my whole body. And it was February of last year, and I went into A&E, and I was on immunosuppressants at the time as well. So I kind of thought I was going to get different kind of care, because obviously it was quite vulnerable, me being there. And I was seen by triage, and they didn't even do my blood pressure or anything like that. They offered me some paracetamol, and that was about it. And I went back in the waiting room, and I waited for 7 hours, and finally saw a doctor. And they told me that I had to wait for my derm appointment. And I asked them if I could have an IV, because fluid IVs are amazing for TSW, where we're so dehydrated. They just do the world of good. I've been into A&E a few times, and I've always had one, and it's done me the world of good for a few days. She told me that I wasn't allowed an IV because I hadn't vomited, so I didn't need one, and that I should just drink more. So yeah, I told them that I had suicidal ideation. They could clearly see my whole face was open and wet and orange. And yeah, all they could tell me was to wait for my derm appointment, and I got sent home after 7 hours on my own. So, you know, the depths of how much more support we need is so significant. And I'm sure they were really busy that time in A&E, but I think with a skin condition, you can really be just pushed to the side and made out that, like, it's just skin, and you know, you can just cope with it, but it's so much more than skin.
Yeah, definitely. I guess building on that a little bit, from both your perspective and maybe your perspective from the doctor, are there just any like myths and stigmas that surround both eczema and TSW that you want to address or say, you know, that's not true?
Yeah, so, well, the fact that a lot of medical professionals say that TSW doesn't exist, say that it is a social media fad, and that we shouldn't get sucked into the myth of TSW online.
Yeah,
blows my mind, and it's just really hurtful. Like, so many of them, I saw a doctor on social media the other day saying that he's been a doctor for 10 years and he's never seen the symptoms of TSW. I beg to differ. I think they kind of just see it from the vision of their education, which I completely understand, but I do think there needs to be a lot more listening to the patient's experiences and not being so ignorant, because a lot of them sometimes say, you know, I've had this many years of education, and, you know, to counteract that, we can say, well, but we've had a lifetime of this condition, and we know that it's not X, know that we're having symptoms that we've never had before. So yeah, that's one of the main stigmas, the fact that TSW is real and it is a condition, and it's increasingly happening to more and more people, sadly. It also is said a lot that steroids are safe, and yes, they are safe for some people, but we need to work out why they aren't for other people, because I think that's where the contradictory line is very thin. Just the general gist that when you go to the doctors in general, or for a skin condition, you are more than likely given a temporary fix. And I think that's the thing that needs to be changed. We need to get to the root cause of things and work out why we're having symptoms, and what we can do naturally within our diet or sleep or stress and then kind of things to help our health, instead of just using potentially dangerous temporary fixes. I could write a book nowadays.
I feel like I could talk to you all day and just keep asking questions and finding out more, because I don't know. I'll be honest and say,
I'm sure there's lots I don't know too.
And just having spoken to you this morning, I just want to know more. Just want to find out more and know what we can do to help and support as much as possible. Yeah, another massive thank you, Beth. I don't think we can say thank you.
Yeah.
I know. And same for me. I really appreciate it.
Well, we'll definitely be speaking to you soon, and hopefully we can all help and work together and be as much as part of the community as we can be as well.
Thank you. I'll speak to you guys soon.